We are about to get rocked here as we are now live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, our flagship on sportnarium.com/player, when a guy I've lost count with on how many times he's been with us here on Sportswire Radio. I think he's been on Tim and RPD that I think have probably been on the most in Sportswire Radio Sports Report history, but for good reasons here, because we've got a lot to get into here when it comes to KOW, because Meltdown is right around the corner, and we will certainly get into it. A lot of announcements ahead here. KOW is marching on to the 10th anniversary show here later this year in November, so it is always exciting when we get a chance to speak with KOW's own. So without further ado, here on the Sports Report, the number one global sports show, ALP, ALP, ALP. That is the heart and soul of KOW. That is ring announcer and host, ALP. My friend, long time no speak.
Yeah, man, it's been a while. How are you doing?
Good. I feel like I've spoke with everybody else KOW really these days. The Natural Born Fighter, RPD. We even heard from, obviously, the Cumbrian Outlaw, Rick Marcus, for the first time in a while. Lucy's coming on. Lucy, we always hear from. And the Ronin, Brian Aidenson's been on here a couple times. The unforgettable Andre Dacker. I mean, I've lost count from KOW alums. Even the Playboy Prince Lance Rivera's been on more before you. So it's good to have you on here. It's been a while, but obviously set the tables for us, because I do want to get to it here very quickly, and that we are marching to the 10th anniversary show here in November, and time certainly flies it, because I remember speaking with you, and we were like, oh, well, we have a KOW show. Oh, will KOW finally come back? And here we are, and we're right around the corner, I think a little less than 5 months away from that 10th anniversary show. And talk to me a little bit about that here for those listening and watching this on Sportswire Radio.
Yeah, obviously the 10th anniversary show has sort of been looming large over my mind, and I think everybody involved with KOW's mind for quite a while now. Obviously, when we first started, you know, the idea of making it to a year was a huge deal, and then we got to 5, and in the build up to that, we put a lot of effort into it, and you know, really had some long-term stories going on, and it was a really good show, and we were all very proud of how that went. And then obviously, ever since we were like, we've got to 5, the next thing is obviously, you know, 10. So for a very long time, you know, myself and everyone else involved in KOW have had it in the back of our minds in regards to the next stop. So we're all very excited for it. Obviously, this year, everything that goes on in every single show will have some sort of impact on the 10th anniversary show. Who the champions are going to be, who's going to be putting themselves in a position to potentially challenge for titles on that show. Basically, who is going to be able to set themselves a place on that event. And in the history books, really, like say, the 5th anniversary show was a huge deal. We always want to make our anniversary shows huge, but especially with it celebrating 10 years of KOW, we want to make it, you know, bigger than we ever have before. And yeah, I think everyone is sort of, everyone on the roster, whether they be somebody who started on day one, somebody who started recently, everyone has it in the back of their minds that, yeah, I might have this match on this show, but, you know, at the end of the road, at the end of that journey, is going to be that 10th anniversary show, and who are going to be the people who make their moments and create their history on what could well be our biggest show ever, and what we're aiming to be our biggest show ever.
Absolutely, no question about that. It just means that we're also getting all older here. We're all getting older because, right, we think about the 1st year, the 5th year, the 10th year, and we get a huge shout out actually from somebody, an up-and-coming wrestler from Nonstop Action Wrestling. That is, of course, Goliath. He says, congratulations on the upcoming 10th anniversary. No small feat for sure, because his company just started out in December of last year. So the fact that they're starting out, they can certainly appreciate the fact that it's been 10 years. I mean, you ever think about that first show back then 10 years ago? You ever think about that and say, hey, here we are now. We've had all these big names that have basically gone on to all these great things. And even our current champion, 2-Bit, is basically, he's like one of the hottest names right now in professional wrestling in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, that first show I think about on a regular basis. I think every show we do, in the build up, it gets so hectic, and we're also focused on selling tickets and putting together a good show. But for me personally, and I know some of the other guys involved, there is sort of that reflective period after each show where you obviously take on board what you liked, what you didn't like. Largely we're lucky enough to say that, we liked the vast majority of it. And yeah, that first show, it seems so long ago. I mean, when we did our first show, I was 20, and now I'm 30. So it's literally a third of my
we're all
life.
getting old. Listen, I have had 2 conversations in the last month with one friend that's turning 30 and another friend that just turned 30. So 30 now, it's like, it's okay, now it's getting scary time. So listen, that's a big jump. It doesn't feel like a big jump when you go, let's say 30 to 40, or even from like 10 to 20, but now you go 20 to 30, it's like, so definitely, I'm sure that's the same for you.
Yeah, exactly. And when you think it's been like a third of my life that I've been doing it now, when you put it in that sort of context, it's crazy to think about. And like say with the cycle of doing shows, I've said before, sometimes you almost dump them from memory. And sometimes when we're getting prepared for a show, somebody like, oh yeah, because this thing happened at the last show. And I'm like, oh yeah, that did happen. But you have to be like, right, that date's gone. Those matches are gone. Like it's the next set of things. So especially when it comes to that sort of thing, it is hard to reflect on it. And one of the guys involved with KOW, who I did used to stay with when we were in Barrow, actually has every single event post we've ever done on the wall in one room. Cool. Yeah, so when I was staying with them, I'd always at some point during the weekend, because obviously I go back fairly early and stay for the show and then leave. There'd always be some point that weekend where I'd sort of end up sat there looking at that wall. And even in the time they've lived in that house, it's gone from 6 years of KOW to now 10, and is literally like wrapped around a whole, like basically half of the room now. And just looking back on it and looking at each poster and looking at all the faces of people we worked with in the past, people who are still working for us now, how different people used to look, looking at a poster and be like, oh yeah, that's that show where that happened, or that's this show where after the show we went out and did this. And there's so much history now, and so much of it almost that it gets lost sometimes. I'm like a massive stats nerd, which I'm sure we've mentioned before. And at one point, I was like, I want to go back and have all the results from every single show and like work out all the win-loss records and stuff. And looking back at some of them, especially early on, I was like, oh yeah, we did that. Oh yeah, I completely forgot that happened, or this happened. And so it is crazy to think about. But in terms of the 10th anniversary, like say, it's a lot of hard work over a number of years. It's a celebration for me and everyone involved. It's a celebration for the fans. And the cool thing is with KOW is it's almost, we always have our fixtures, the people who've been there for a long time, but there is that revolving door, and a lot of the people we've already talked about, are relatively new. The Brian Aidensons, the RPDs, the Lance Riveras, these sort of people have only just really come into KOW in the last year or so. But I'd like to think even for them, being on a show that is a 10th anniversary show, obviously assuming they will all be on that show.
Let's hope.
Yeah, let's hope. But yeah, I assume even for them, that's a big deal, thinking, well, this is a company who's been around for 10 years and they consider us important enough that we would be involved. So yeah, it's really huge. And like say, even in lockdown, when we did our first show back in November last year, which was our 9th anniversary show, but we didn't title as our 9th anniversary show. It's I've been thinking about it for a long time, and ever since the 5th one, I've been thinking about it. So yeah, it's huge, and it is nice to reflect. And I'm hoping that, as we get closer to it, I'm going to be able to take the opportunity to really reflect on how far we've come and how much work we've put in and everything we've achieved. And, fingers crossed that show will go off without a hitch and will be huge.
I got a very good feeling about that. And of course, if you like what you hear from KOW, you're on Facebook, certainly go to Knockout W. That's their page on Facebook. Also Twitter, KO_wrestling, Instagram, K_O_wrestling. And Goliath comes in here and makes a good point here, because he actually says the Playboy Prince Lance Rivera was with Nonstop Action Wrestling in their first show in December. He said, very great to hear that he's made it to KOW and hope he's doing well. And I got to actually ask you very quickly on the Playboy Prince Lance Rivera, because I guess you would call him a former Wrestle Island World Champion. I guess he was champion for what? I guess similar to what Yokozuna held the championship. WrestleMania 9. I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Does that make you maybe proud that a KOW alum held a world championship somewhere else, albeit for a few minutes in the Playboy Prince Lance Rivera? It's actually a good topic, actually, kind of ask you on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, anyone who's been on a KOW show at some point or another, personally, I always, the phrase I use is like I see them as one of my boys. That sounds slightly condescending, but it's not meant to. But it means it's somebody that I like to keep an eye on, and even if they only work for us once or for a short period of time, I always like to see that they're doing well. And obviously, Lance has only wrestled for one show. For us, I've obviously seen him wrestle in Markham and for the Kingdom of Wrestling. Sure. I've seen Markham for Odyssey Pro Wrestling, so I've been around him for a little while. I mean, speaking of which, recently at a show I bumped into the driller, Dan Maloney, for the first time in a long time, and obviously he was involved with us early on. I think our title was actually the first title he ever held. So that was really cool. It was a show at the Frog and Bucket in Manchester. He was there. I went out for a smoke break. He was milling around and came over and said hi, and we got to have a chat for a few minutes. I got to ask how his family was and stuff. But, even just like, obviously he's recently been to Dubai and he was signed by WWE for a period of time, and he's looking ripped to death and doing really well. So, I mean, that's just an example I can think of, it's always nice to see that people we've been involved with, whether it be for a long time or a short time, are doing well. So yeah, I was happy to see that Lance had won the title. Obviously, the way that social media works, I saw that he'd won the title, and then it was only the next day that I actually saw that, he got screwed out of it immediately afterwards.
Saw the next tweet, literally a few minutes later, or the next post. I mean, it was kind of quicker than a New York Minute.
Yeah, I don't know. I missed it, but I literally saw it and was like, oh, okay, that's awesome. He won that title. That's cool. That's a big deal. And then, literally the next day, because I was only on Twitter for a bit, I went back on and then I saw a picture of Hustle Malone with the title and was like, wait, what? And then, went back and did a look-see and was like, oh, he got cashed in on. That kind of sucks. Yeah. But from knowing Lance for the short time I have known him, I don't think he'll take that line down. Obviously, still an amazing achievement. Anybody getting to be a champion, whether they're a champion for a year or for a minute, it's a huge deal. I mean, maybe to some extent, Commissioner Steele can relate, having, won the title and then, lost it at the next major KOW show. So, not exactly the same, but some parallels. And I know that Lance is a guy who's hungry for titles wherever he is and whatever he's doing.
Yeah, no question about that. No, listen, I definitely think that the Playboy Prince, Lance Rivera, will definitely get gold somewhere. Who knows where else it'll be. And speaking of Odyssey Pro Wrestling, I wanted to get your thoughts because obviously the former KOW World Champion before our current champion, 2-bit holds it, the War Machine, Craig Collins, appeared, and he actually wrestled for the Odyssey Pro Wrestling World Championship this past weekend over at Mutiny in Morecambe against Ryan Hunter, and wanted to get your feelings on that when a KOW talent like the War Machine, Craig Collins, gets to wrestle for a World Championship match, and give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, Craig is as much of a staple in Morecambe as he is in Barrow, really, and obviously this was his first show back. I mean, I think it speaks volumes about Craig that he's had 3 matches back since lockdown, and every single one of them has been for a championship, and for the top championship in each of the promotions he's wrestled for. It was a nice surprise. Obviously, it was announced that Rick Marcus was meant to be wrestling for the title, so I'm not exactly sure what happened there in terms of Rick not being able to appear. But yeah, I mean, Craig Collins is definitely a very worthy replacement. He is a former champion in Morecambe himself and, a legend in that town. So it was cool to see. Obviously, Ryan Hunter has been doing some questionable things lately.
Definitely, listen, we compared him, I think, with Lucy, and we certainly got Rick Marcus's thoughts on it and RPD's on Thursday. He basically did a Bash at the Beach 96-like turn when it came to Mr. Ryan Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the most beloved wrestlers I've ever seen live, I mean, he's definitely up there with a Lucas Neon or a Nightmare in KOW. Those fans,
obviously, Commissioner.
Yeah, exactly. Nightmare. Sorry, not Nightmare. Ryan Hunter.
Well, he is a nightmare, actually.
Yeah, he's been a nightmare at the moment. Yeah, that's right. As part of the spotlight, can't believe he's associating himself with Chris Brooker. That's kind of a hard pill to swallow. But yeah. I mean, because as well, I can't claim to have been to every Morecambe show because I haven't, but I've been numerous times over the years, from the days when it was XWA to when it was paid promotions to when it was Alpha Omega to now when it's OPW. So I've seen not every part of Ryan's journey in Morecambe, but a lot of it. I was there when he was a ring announcer. I was there when he made his actual debut and wrestled his first match.
Andre Decker was telling us that he remembers training with him in the gym years ago. I mean, that's how far back some go with him in Morecambe.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the one training session I went to in Morecambe, I think he was there for that as well. Obviously, I was in the beginner class and he was obviously in the advanced class because he was far ahead of me. But yeah, I mean, like say, I've seen every part of it, and his story of being, no offense to the guy as somebody who's big on myself, who was at the time a, chubby cameraman who, put a lot of work in to lose weight and trained hard and debuted and worked really hard and got those fans behind him. I was just as shocked as I know everyone in attendance at Morecambe was to see that was the way he acted. Obviously, he wasn't at the last KOW show. He wasn't able to compete. He's not announced for this KOW show as of yet, so I'm not sure what's happening with that at the moment. I don't know if he's focusing just on OPW now and keeping his title. I don't know if he's going to get announced in the next couple of weeks before Meltdown. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't heard anything from Commissioner Steele in regards to that, but it's going to be interesting to see if his attitude change in Morecambe is going to carry over to Barrow, where obviously he has been a fan favourite. He's friends with Shawnee as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Definitely in Morecambe and for OPW, huge shock. A massive who for the spotlight, obviously basically poaching the top guy in the company to join their cause. They're a really intimidating faction, especially with Brooker as co-general manager. Obviously, the other co-general manager, Ethan Edwards, somebody I'm also very
we know him very well,
very familiar with. So yeah, I'm definitely keeping an eye on it. I've been meaning. I managed to go to their first show, Set Sail, I believe, if I remember the name correctly. Yeah, and I've been meaning to go ever since, and things just to another show ever since, and things just haven't lined up. But I'll definitely make sure to go again because, as they do say, it's real in Morecambe, and I know they are doing a great job there. So I do look forward to being able to check it out in person rather than just having to read Lucy's incredible show reports when they come out and relying on that.
I'm looking forward to listen again. Cheap plug here. Next Friday, live with us is going to be Lucy Simons, who's going on to do a lot of great things over in Odyssey Pro Wrestling, but also with us here, she got her start in KOW. So I'm looking forward to getting not only her thoughts on Odyssey Pro Wrestling, but of course KOW and Redemption, and also going into Meltdown, which by the time we have Lucy will be the week before that. So I'm really looking forward to that. And also, I see our guest from Monday, Colin McGregor, who's tuned in. So I want to give him a shout out. Looking forward to hearing from him and all the great things that he does here. But I want to go obviously into Meltdown now a little bit, because obviously we have some matches announced here. And I want to go to the most recent one that was announced here by our general manager here. And that is, of course, Commissioner Steele. And Commissioner Steele is definitely trying to figure out how to deal with the underclass, how to deal with our reigning defending champion 2-Bit, who also made work of the War Machine, Craig Collins, the former champion here in KOW. We will see the world champion 2-Bit in action, but we just don't know yet who he's going to be in the ring with. So, I mean, obviously you don't know yet. You don't have an inclining, but, I mean, walk me through what we can expect here in our main event coming up here July the 9th. In Cloud9, in Barrow, at the Lounge. It is going to be our reigning defending champion 2-Bit against, well, we'll find out.
Well, as somebody who's been a general manager dealing with possibly, I mean, this is the thing at the moment. We were talking about the 10-year history of KOW before. When talking about the underclass, possibly the only other group in KOW history I can think of that matches up to them is the Triad. The Triad were, sort of the main threat to KOW back when I was the general manager. So in some regard, I can put myself in Commissioner Steele's shoes in that I was trying to deal with the Triad. He's trying to deal with the underclass. And I know when you're in that situation, you have to do whatever you can. Obviously, since 2-Bit won the title at our return show, Resurrection, he's cheated left, right, and centre. Let's be honest. Let's not, beat around the bush. He hasn't won a single match fairly. I believe he put his feet on the ropes to beat Nightmare. Jennifer, revealed herself and joined the underclass to help him win the title. Obviously we had the crooked ref in Craig Collins' first match, and then at the last show again, 2-Bit was relying on underhanded tactics in order to get the win. And when you're in that position, when you've got somebody as resourceful as 2-Bit, he'll do everything he can to make sure he keeps hold of that gold. The person in authority, the person in power, has to do everything they can do to make sure that things are fair. There could be an argument that, I could imagine the underclass definitely complaining and saying, oh, it's not fair that he doesn't know who's going to be wrestling. But I just see it as right or wrong. Obviously, if you look at Nightmare, Will Carter, Craig Collins have now all been screwed over by 2-Bit, all potentially worthy heavyweight champions. Nightmare, a former two-time champion. Collins, a former two-time champion. Will Carr's never been champion and got screwed out of his chance.
Showcase, he's tag champ, so he's held quite a bit of gold, no question.
Exactly, but he got screwed out of his chance to be the heavyweight champion, the main champion in KOW. I don't know, there's still a lot of sore feelings there. So I can definitely respect that decision. I think it's a good decision by Steele ultimately to try and even the playing field a little bit so that 2-Bit can't prepare, can't scheme, can't plan too much because he doesn't know who he's going to be in the ring with. Is it going to be one compare? Is it going to be more than one compare? Is it going to be a current member of the roster? Is it going to be an old member of the roster? Is it going to be somebody making their debut? These are the things we don't know. It could be anyone. Or say, there's nothing, as far as I can tell, that says it will only be one person. It may well be. But, I can't see anything in the announcement that was made. And from my limited conversations with Steele about it, nobody's said, it will be a one-on-one match.
Well,
so
I have a thought on this. If Commissioner Steele, before I get to Goliath, if he really wanted to make it interesting, why not? If you really want to do something interesting, why doesn't Commissioner Steele have somebody from the underclass go up in there against 2-Bit? Because think about it, right? We know, as far as we know, the unforgettable Andre Decker, he isn't in action. Correct?
Correct.
You could throw somebody like that who's been on with us several times, and now all of a sudden, you could really now pit underclass versus underclass. There's nothing stopping Commissioner Steele to do that. I'm just throwing that out there. That's a possibility. I don't know how far Steele has thought about this. I don't know what his thinking is right now. Obviously, nobody does. He may not decide this until literally it's main event time. He literally just may not decide this because there's a lot to think about here. There's a lot to decipher when it comes to the underclass. So there's a strong possibility here, ALP, that I could see Commissioner Steele deciding, I don't know, ring times, 8:30, 8:45, whatever time the main event is. But if it was me, why not underclass versus underclass?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting idea. I think obviously it would put the loyalty of the other members of the underclass to the test, definitely. Decker is the longest serving member of the underclass, but he's also made it clear at every possible opportunity that in a lot of regards he is normally out for himself and is out for glory. So
he's always out for himself. We've known him a long time on Sportzwire Radio. He's been with us more times than he would admit.
Yeah, so if Decker was put in that position, would he do what his leader wanted and would he lie down, which I imagine is what 2-Bit would expect of him, or would he see it as an opportunity to forge his own path, either separate from the underclass, take over the underclass? There's a lot of possibilities there. The other, if we're throwing out crazy theories here, the other idea that I had, which I think is unlikely from knowing the person I'm going to talk about, but one thing I did wonder is Commissioner Steele is retired.
I knew you were going with this. I knew this was going to happen. That's why I said, let me at least serve up the first pitch. Let you take it out of the park on the next one, because I knew that's where you were going. I knew you were going with that.
So, it's a very interesting idea. Especially with Rick Marcus having now retired and the hatchet seemingly being buried to some extent between the two. Obviously, it was their match that had that retirement stipulation. Could there have been a conversation where Rick said, as far as I'm concerned, you could come back?
Hey, Ric Flair's still out there trying. Why not?
Yeah, what they say, nobody ever really retires in wrestling. Everyone that... for years we said, they were the guy who did stay retired. Shawn Michaels came back. Steve Austin's come back. Yeah. Terry Funk came back, 600 times.
Terry Funk came back, 6,000 times.
Yeah, so, like I say, I don't know. It is my sort of, if I was Lucy and writing a list of most likely opponents, which I imagine she may well end up doing for us, right, that would be my sort of wild card, dark horse pick would be, what if Commissioner Steele's decided, well, Carter couldn't do it, Nightmare couldn't do it, Collins couldn't do it, why don't I take them on myself? So it's definitely an interesting idea. I don't know if that's how he's thinking. I don't know if that's something that he wants. I mean, obviously he was a champion, like we touched on before. It was a very short reign, so maybe the temptation for another taste of glory and to knock the underclass back would overwhelm his, honourable principles of upholding justice. But it's definitely an interesting idea and something that's 100% worth talking about and keeping in the back of your mind, just in case. Maybe it will be Steele's moment.
Well, we'll certainly find out here. Again, a lot of interesting scenarios that could take place here when it comes to Meltdown July the 9th here for KOW Knockout Wrestling. And always excited to speak KOW here with, of course, one of our guys here that is Mr. ALP, the heart and soul of KOW, and he's doing event hosting and ring announcing. So if you like what you hear from KOW, I highly encourage it. It's K_O_wrestling on Instagram, KO_wrestling on Twitter, and Knockout W if you're on Facebook. So there's a lot of great sources for information here. And Goliath has chimed in here and makes a good point, and I forgot to bring it up. So let me bring it up here now because he made a good point about 2-Bit. He says that 2-Bit has made his bed, it sounds like, for this one. Time to lay in it. Maybe. It might be. I mean, I don't know. But you know what, 2-Bit? This is what I found about 2-Bit here. In knowing him, covering him for the past year and a half, ALP, 2-Bit always finds a way. He always, he'll scheme his way to find a way. I don't know what it is here, but I really hope Commissioner Steele, he knows what he's doing on this one. I really hope that he has a plan here because 2-Bit always finds a way to win.
Yeah, and I think the thing that's so frustrating with 2-Bit, especially as somebody who's seen him from when he first started training, is he doesn't need to. His
ring skills, I mean, again, I say it all the time, and I'm not just saying it because you're here. Every wrestler I speak with, whether it was a Goliath, whether it's the up-and-coming guys at Nonstop Action Wrestling, the LWF guys, Odyssey, obviously with KOW talent, certainly GT Ministries, any company I speak with, I always say, 2-Bit, of all the people I've covered, to me, he's the guy that's got maybe the best ring skills. Bar none.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, some wrestlers, not to name anyone obviously or diminish anyone, but some wrestlers do need to rely on unfair tactics in order to win, maybe to make up for different shortcomings, whether that be just, not having as much heart as other competitors or not being as athletic as other competitors or whatever it may be. But, 2-Bit, for my money, is one of the best people to ever come out of the KOW Academy, arguably maybe the best in terms of his ability. He's gone out there and learned from some of the best, but he still insists on using these underhanded and unfair tactics to win. And like I say, he really doesn't need to. If he actually maybe believed himself in a little bit more and trusted himself a little bit more, maybe he would be able to win fair and square, but he's shown that that isn't something he's willing to do. Will Meltdown finally be the night that 2-Bit gets his comeuppance and loses? It's very hard to say, obviously, especially not knowing who he's going to be wrestling against. But I think so far, out of all his matches that he's had as champion, this might be the night that seems most likely he could lose it. I think in terms of 2-Bit and his legacy, he wants to be the longest champion ever. Obviously, some title that Chris Ridgway still holds from way back very early on. I know he obviously takes a lot of influence from Chris, and I think from knowing him, I think he wants to be the man that beats that. But if he wants to, he's going to have to survive Meltdown, he's going to have to survive Road to Gold, and he's going to have to survive... Pardon me. He's going to have to survive the 10th anniversary show. Oh, my voice is going.
You should know how I feel because there are times I do 5-6 hour sets between 3 hour sets and 2 intervals. So certainly you might know how I feel, but I know that you know that anyway. So we'll see what happens when it comes to 2. But obviously, I'm keeping my fingers crossed, though, that Commissioner Steele has a good plan. And of course, if you want to buy a ticket, TNT Records is definitely the place that you want to go and buy a ticket because they do not only a great job when it comes to music and other things, but they do a great job when it comes to supporting KOW. But let me get to the other match that we spoke about here. Actually, quite a bit last week. It was a big talk here, and I made sure that we spent a little bit on KOW, of course, with the natural-born fighter, RP Davis. And will he be the guy very well to have gold here finally around his waist or on his shoulders here? We'll find out because you really want to talk about a match that could be a banger, a main event. I mean, look at the run that RPD is on. And conversely, Keenan, also another member of Underclass who has gold here. I mean, the run that he is on. This is almost in some ways like a crash collision course between these two. This could really be a classic. Something tells me here, RPD and Keenan very well could be a match that I would want to spend, I don't know, 20 pounds, 30 pounds, 40 pounds, whatever you want to come up with a price, because something tells me here, after seeing RPD in the ring with Anthony Ogogo not too long ago, seeing him in the ring everywhere, winning the Rumble over at Wrestle Island, this is the guy, and Keenan himself with his work, I mean, ALP, you might have very well outdone yourself yet again here. You've got to talk to me about the natural born fighter, RP Davis, my very dear friend who's been on here maybe more times than anybody but yourself, against Keenan for the Showcase Championship. This is going to be a classic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's really interesting. I think this is the only time ever that we've had two guys who are pretty new to the company, both involved in a title match. Obviously, Keenan has only been on 3 shows and he's already 4-0. He's already Showcase champion.
And multiple wins on one show also, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Back-to-back wins to win the title as well. He's, I think, other than maybe a Dan Maloney or maybe a Kid Lycos, he's one of the only people who's had such rapid success and captured a title in KOW so quickly. And then on the other side of the ring, you've got RPD, who's only been on 2 shows. And again, he's 2-0. He's caught on incredibly quickly. Keenan, one of the most hated men on the roster after only a few shows. RPD, one of the most beloved men on the roster, again after only a couple of shows. So it's intriguing to see 2 of sort of, not new wrestlers to wrestling at all, but for KOW, obviously sort of the new blood coming in and trying to make an impact. It's really interesting. I think in terms of quality of wins, it's really hard to pick between them. Obviously, one of Keenan's wins was in a tag match, but again, he got the fall there and looked very impressive. Keenan's 3-0 in singles competition, whereas for RPD, he's beaten Brian Aidenson. I'm going to get grief for that, just for mentioning that.
I was waiting for that moment, because don't worry, we're going to bring up Brian Aidenson in a little while for sure.
Yeah, exactly. He beat Brian Aidenson, and obviously at the last show he beat Rick Marcus, a legend of the company.
Oh, what a match. What a match.
Exactly, and potentially his last match, my match of the night, an incredible match as well. The fans have really taken to him. I often used to say to people, our crowd might take a little bit, like a couple of shows to warm up to you, but once they do, they're into you, and whether you're a good guy or a bad guy, they're zoned into that from then on. But RPD's caught on again almost as quickly as anybody I can think of in company history. Obviously, with RPD's sort of fighting pedigree, he's made it abundantly clear he's here for titles. He's made his way into a title match incredibly quickly. I think sort of the more technical ability of Keenan is going to come up with the more striking style of RPD, and it's going to be a really intriguing match. Obviously, the underclass still have 2 of the titles, both of the singles titles in KOW. 2-Bit is looking precarious with an unknown opponent. Keenan as well, I could argue, is looking equally as precarious with those fans.
Keenan, this is going to be his toughest test. And before I get to Lord Damian Stone, who was there at the last show, I do think for whatever reason, Keenan, he very well could meet his match here coming up on July the 9th.
Yeah, definitely. It's a shout that it could very well happen. Like, say, RPD's riding momentum in KOW and elsewhere. Like, say, obviously, he's just wrestled Anthony Ogogo, just beat Andre Decker in Markham, just won the Island Rumble. It seems like everywhere you turn, he's doing something ridiculous and getting even more momentum behind him. And he's going to be carrying that and all that experience into his match with Keenan. As far as I know, I might be wrong, but I feel like RPD has never held a title in wrestling up to this point.
Actually, we spoke about this on Thursday's show, and RPD actually spoke about the fact that in wrestling, he's never held a championship, and that's something that he would like to accomplish, because obviously in boxing, we know he was a multiple-time world champion, but in wrestling, he hasn't held a championship yet, so that's something that is on his bucket list.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, I think people are more motivated for that first title. Not necessarily, a lot more than others, but that first one is special and something that, everybody remembers. I'm sure if you asked Nightmare if you could get a sensible word out of him, he'd be able to tell you about
words of Nightmare. I mean, how you figuring that? And you know him better than anybody.
Well, if you can understand the screaming and garbled, noises that he makes, I've sort of picked up a little bit over the years. I'm a little fluent in Nightmareese, but I'm still not, I'm not fluent. I'm getting there, but I'm not quite there.
All right.
But if you talk about Lucas Neon winning, that might be a better example. Lucas Neon winning his first showcase title.
Yes, we had Lucas on. Yes, last year that was a big deal. Speaking with Lucas, I could still to this day feel the emotion what Lucas felt describing that to us last year. We had him on right around this time last year, speaking about that. So yeah, that I think that would be a very, very fair translation. And Lord Damian Stone, who was there at Redemption, says Keenan has definitely caught a few eyes across the country. He is an amazingly skilled athlete, another one that doesn't need to take the path that he has. That's an excellent point, because I think we spoke about this when Lucy came on. We spoke about Keenan at the time when she last came on last month. That's a fair point. Keenan's got the ring skills. He doesn't need it. He doesn't need the underclass. You think about Decker, and Decker definitely makes sense. Decker and Two-Bit, there's a long-standing relationship. But Keenan, if all the members of the underclass, you think about them, he's the one that almost ALP could shine on his own.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think one of the things that, again, talking about the 10-year history of KOW, one of the things I am most proud of is that we've worked with a lot of people who've gone on to do, bigger things and gone on and had an incredible impact. Obviously, we spoke about Dan Maloney recently and the things he's done. Obviously, we had Pete Dunne on a show, and obviously he's gone on to do lots of different things.
Different quotes about KOW. I think I used that on Monday's show when I was on, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Chris Brooks and Drew Parker wrestling in Japan. Obviously, Chris Ridgway, who's the junior heavyweight champion in Noah and just won the Progress title. I do see KOW in a lot of ways as being, if you come now, you're going to see somebody who's going to be massive in the future, and I think that is one of the cool things about it. And Keenan's definitely one of those guys. His first show for KOW, I was really impressed, not by his tactics and his demeanor, but in terms of his in-ring skills, I was very, very impressed by him, and he's just gone on to show how good he really is in the ring. Again, he's somebody who potentially doesn't need to cheat. Obviously, I think Two-Bit's probably the master of cheating when it comes to the underclass. I'd say that Keenan's sort of not to steal somebody else's moniker, but the ultimate opportunist of the underclass in terms of a couple of his victories. He's sort of stolen out from under the nose of somebody else in order to win. But yeah, he's incredibly talented. No doubt in that. Obviously, I'd much rather he wasn't in the underclass and he was, fighting for KOW, or at least, fighting for the fans rather than fighting for Two-Bit and, everything that he stands for. But yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting. Like I say, Keenan obviously has only just really started his reign. So is it going to be a case where it's a short reign? What would I think I'm right in saying be the shortest reign in the history of the Showcase Championship if he was to lose it to RPD? Is RPD going to be able to, be the fifth man to hold the sixth?
We've had Two-Bit, we had Lucas Neon. We had
Two-Bit, Neon, Marcus first. Yeah, it's six. I did my maths right this time.
I was going to say that.
So with that, but yeah, is he going to be the sixth guy to hold it? Yeah, and I'd say so far in terms of what's been announced, it's definitely one of the most intriguing matches on the show.
Yeah, see, I don't know, because in some ways they have different styles, but they've gotten to where they are in their careers in some crazy way, kind of similar. I mean, they've obviously had different backgrounds, different stories. They're definitely appealing for different reasons, but I don't know here. I mean, obviously I'm rooting for RPD for personal reasons, for all he's done with this here on Sportswire Radio, but I have to think here that the underclass is going to be lurking here. I still have to say that the underclass, they're going to make sure that their guy hangs on to the gold. I don't know why I'm thinking this, but this is what I think is in the back of my mind. I don't know, and I say this to RPD all the time. How are you going to basically compete with the numbers game? And the numbers right now are still with the underclass.
Yeah, and especially with Rick no longer around as well, who's obviously the person in KOW who's closest to him as well, you would think he's not going to have that backup now. An enemy of my enemy is my friend. So, is there going to be a case where other people who've had issues with the underclass might get involved? That's definitely an interesting point to think about. Is he going to be able to overcome those numbers odds? I mean, the other thing I would say is, if ever there was a time for one of the chips to fall for the underclass, I think it would be this show. Obviously, at the previous show, at Redemption, they had the opportunity to clean sweep, and it went pretty well. but ultimately in the main event, Decker and Logan missed the opportunity to get the clean sweep and capture those tag team titles. So for the first time since we've returned, I think the momentum is more on KOW's side than the underclasses side. So I don't know if I think that they could lose both the titles. I think that might be a bit of a tall order. I think if one of the titles falls, they'll double down on making sure they keep the other one. But I could definitely see the showcase title or the heavyweight title being lost on this show. And if I had to put my money on it purely based on the fact that it is 2-Bit who is the heavyweight champion, my money would be more on the showcase title, because if I know 2-Bit as much as he will, say about his group and how they're all together, when push comes to shove, he is a rat. He is the rat king. He will, he will bite off his own tail to wriggle out of that trap. And,
and we've had 2-Bit on here. In fact, the last time I had 2-Bit on here, which was about 4 months ago, I literally thought that that's what he was going to do, was basically come from the stream, come out and try to basically put me in the rat trap. So 2-Bit, listen, he'll find a way here. I don't know about Keenan. This is really a banger, as they would say. This is truly a banger of a matchup. I could definitely see this legitimate. I'm just saying it. I can literally see this go one way or the other. Both wrestlers, again, doing a great job. We'll see, though. I mean, certainly, could there be cracks in the underclass? Maybe. We saw a little bit of that at the last show, but we'll figure it out here. And also wanted to give a plug to, obviously, a new supporter of Sportzwire Radio. That is our very dear friends over at the Pro Zone Gaming Division. Of course, Pro Zone Gaming Division is an advertising and marketing agency. Does a great job when it comes to promoting all types of things. They make merchandise for gamers, for streamers, for mods, moms, you name it, and in between here. And of course, they have a huge upcoming event here on May 2023 in California. It's 3 days, 2 nights. It's for Santa Ana, California. So pack your bags here. It invites all gamers, content creators, and co-players and everywhere else here. It's theme nights, bonfires, sandy creeks. Bring your friends, community, or make new ones here. You can follow them at FNTSYXP for more information for the retreat. You can also go to Pro Zone Gaming Division on Prozone GD. That's Instagram and Twitter. You can also find out more information on Discord as well. They're on Discord. They also do sponsorships, affiliates. It's free to join. Definitely make sure you support them. Also want to thank Mr. Snoop, also on Twitter, for his support of Sportswire Radio and all the great things that they are doing. So make sure you go follow the hashtag PZGD. That's PZGD. You make sure you give them a huge follow for all the great things that they do for us here on Sportswire Radio. Also want to thank, obviously, Mr. Big Snoop again, Mr. MISTA Big Snoop. He is the man behind Pro Zone Gaming Division, all the great things that they do. So definitely want to make sure we give him support, just like our very dear friend, Mr. ALP. And I want to make sure everybody gives a huge follow also to TNT Records for all the great things that they do also for us here. You can go to TNT Records Barrow without the W on Twitter. You can also hashtag TNT Records Barrow, tntrecords.co.uk to buy a ticket July the 9th, because there's only a few tickets left. We're close to sell out. And you know what KOW shows? Lord Damian Stone was there. He could attest to it. There is no show, I can promise you, like a KOW show. There is nothing like it. I've been covering wrestling for 1.5 years in the UK, and KOW, and I say it every time, every company I'm with, I always make sure to mention KOW. So I got a very, very good feeling you're going to want to go out there. Listen, looking at the physical tickets you get from the KOW show, it's really like second to none. So definitely make sure that you follow all the great things that TNT Records has to offer. Also, Salt House Post Office. Also, I believe we can get tickets still, so you can go there also. Make sure you support them. That's what it's about here in KOW. It's always about community here. We are talking all things related here to KOW with our very dear friend, Mr. ALP. And ALP, I got to bring up the other match here, and I'm so intrigued about this match. I mean, you've outdone yourself. Commissioner Steele have outdone themselves yet again. And I'm not just saying it because you're here and Lucy's coming back next Friday, because our tag team champions are in action, the Freak Show, and they're in action against a guy that has become a very dear friend of mine. That is the Ronin, Brian Aidenson, who I feel like in every show at this point, I bring him with every wrestler, it seems like, that I've had on has wrestled, the Ronin Brian Aidenson. And he is now going to be in a championship match. It's not quite the championship match he wanted, but he's in a championship match. And here's the more intriguing factor about this. He actually gets to pick the partner he can tag up with against the Freak Show here for those tag team championships. So something tells me here, ALP, in this particular case, I'm going to go with it here and say the Ronin Brian Adenson, he very well might have something up his sleeves that I don't know if anybody can do anything about. And maybe this is a brilliant move on his part. Maybe after all the complaining, all the he said, she said, it was one of those things, to quote Limp Bizkit, maybe the Ronin Brian Adenson might know something that we don't, and he very well finally might capture some gold here.
Yeah, definitely. I have to mention an aside, Limp Bizkit, one of my favourite gigs I've ever been to. That was a bunch of fun when I got to go and see them in Manchester back in the day. But yeah, before I talk about Brian Adenson, just going to check
your favorite topic. That's why I wanted to save this one. I want to spend some time on this one.
Yeah, just want to check everything's locked. I mean, like at the last show, obviously you weren't there in person, Tom. I'm sure you saw Lucy's write-up, but
yes,
it might have got lost in. It might have got lost in translation. That obviously after his match, he did get on the mic and demand that Commissioner Steele came out and give him his match with RPD, which didn't end up happening. I was obviously ring announcing and I had the microphone, and I had to endure what was only a second, but it felt like time slowed down and it lasted forever, of Brian coming back through the curtain, locking eyes with me, seeing that intensity and realizing he was walking directly at me. And I have to be honest, as somebody who says had to deal with a triad before, I haven't felt that scared in a long time.
Really? You of all people.
And I was very relieved that when he came up to me, all he wanted was the microphone and not to kick my head in, which obviously he was very capable of doing.
Yeah, those kicks hurt.
Yeah, so I'm always wary around the wrestlers. There's some people that I know I'm pretty safe around. If it's a Nightmare or a Lucas Neal or an RPD, I'm probably fine. But when it's some people, and Brian Adenson being one of them, I'm always very wary when I'm around them, because I am not a wrestler, and all it takes is a split second from them, and I'm on a trip to the hospital. But I think Brian Adenson might be one of the most interesting talking points in KOW altogether at the moment. I mean, not entirely for positive reasons, but there's definitely an argument to be made. For anyone who's not familiar, obviously he debuted against RPD and lost. The word obsession might not be strong enough in terms of how he feels about RPD. Every single opportunity seems like when there's anything to do with KOW, he's always talking about RPD and how he wants that rematch. He obviously got a win against Lachlan Sharp in what was a
big win. I know Lachlan Sharp very well. I've covered him in the LWF, Future Shock Pro Wrestling. I've seen him with John McKinney, their feuds there, and obviously with our friend Stephen Cross in the LWF. So the fact that he did get a win over Lachlan Sharp is a big deal.
Definitely, and it was a great match, really technical, lots of striking. If I was going to pick not necessarily a match of the night, but my favourite match, that probably would have been my favourite match. Okay. Marks and RPD would have been the match of the night, but personally, in terms of if I was picking a match to watch, that would have probably just been my favourite. So, definitely props to both those compares. But obviously, he said Steele that he wanted RPD. Steele told him that wasn't going to be an option because RPD was obviously going to be challenging Keenan, like we discussed earlier, but they had someone in mind. And obviously, thanks to the exclusive video we got from backstage from the guys at Pods Unknown, Lucy managed to catch up with Brian. Got some thoughts from him. He was, he was traditionally not very nice to Lucy, unfortunately, bless her.
Yeah, we saw it on the stream here with us. He certainly, I can say, is not a big fan of Lucy Simons. I can definitely.
No.
And the feeling's mutual, from what I understand.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like maybe that'll end up being a match at the 10th anniversary show, the way that it's going. I'm not sure if Lucy would want that, but you never know. I've just got the WrestleMania X7, "You Think You're Special" going in my head.
Oh my God.
Lucy Simons. Sorry, off on a funny tangent.
Not Jeff Jarrett in China territory. Let's just go with that.
But yeah, so obviously then we saw Commissioner Steele come in and say, "Look, I can't give you the match you want, but I'll give you another opportunity." Brian very quickly changed his tune from being very upset and angry to suddenly wanting to talk business when he realized there was a title shot up for grabs. And obviously they did go away and discuss and came to terms, and now this match is going to happen. I think it's very interesting in terms of Obviously, the Freak Show coming off their biggest win. Obviously, their first title defense on a main show. What was a huge, huge match. The reaction in Cloud9 when the underclass got driven through those tables is up there with the loudest I've ever heard. Collins winning his first title. Neon winning the showcase title.
Like Neon was a big deal. When Neon finally won that,
Yeah.
I mean, you could feel, even when I interviewed Lucas, this was almost 2 years after the day. I mean, it was pretty much, you could feel from Lucas still the emotion.
Yeah, 100%. And like say that, as far as I can recall, is like up there in the top 5 loudest I've ever heard the KOW fans. So you can't underestimate the popularity of the Freak Show, how much the fans wanted to see them beat the underclass and keep their titles. And now they are riding that momentum. Obviously, last time before Redemption, we were talking about the Freak Show having a chance to defend their titles. They've had it a long time. You know, are they going to be able to do the job? And they have done. So they're coming into it looking to be fighting champions, and that's why they'd obviously said to Commissioner Steele, we'll wrestle anyone. You know, we've beaten the underclass. There's no clear next challengers. You know, there's nobody specific waiting in the wings for the next title shot. So you know, bring us the best you've got. Obviously, Brian gets what he wants to some regard in the fact that he gets a title match. But personally, I think it's going to end up being a 2-on-1 handicap match. I don't think he's going to find a partner. Yeah, I mean, as no disrespect, Tom, but as somebody who's not been backstage, Brian has not made any friends in KOW.
You know, we kind of got that sense, and I'll get to Lord Damien Stone's comment in a second, and we kind of got that sense that the Ronan Brian Nadenson, we'd asked him some of the things about what happened after his match with RPD and his feelings that the locker room, I wouldn't quite say that he was a locker room favorite or certainly a locker room leader. So you could make that argument. And I don't see the underclass really caring much for the Ronan Brian Adenson in terms of doing anything in his favor. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I honestly legitimately don't know. I mean, we may have him on before July 9th. We might ask him this question. We've actually spoke with him about this. So maybe that would be something we could ask him then. That would be my guess.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, I made sure to contact Commissioner Steele earlier today just to, you know, sort of get a bit of see if I can, you know, coax some information out of him. And obviously, you know, I didn't get anything from him about who Two-Bit was going to be wrestling, but he did say to me that as far as he knows, Brian still hasn't found a partner, and we are only a couple of weeks out at this point. Like say, when I'm looking at the current KOW roster, I'm not seeing a lot of people. I mean, there is a title up for grabs, but with the way Brian's behaved, with the fact he is a loner at shows, you know, he spends a lot of time by himself. He doesn't really talk to other people.
Well,
he's mainly just focused on him.
Yeah, he's not. And we asked him this question the first time he came on. He's not a group guy. He's not a clique guy. He's not a triad type. He's not an underclass type. He's not one of those guys that really falls into line. He kind of, as they would say, he beats to his own drum. He bangs to his own drum, more or less.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like say, obviously, there's a lot of people in the company who don't like him. You know, I think there's a lot of people who, you know, don't know him or don't have much interest in knowing him as well. So, yeah, I think it's, like say, he might pull something out the bag, but I personally, like say, get the impression that there's a good chance on July 9th he's going to come out and say, I haven't got a partner, because I honestly cannot think of anyone right now who I can see teaming up with him. And, you know, that might be Commissioner Steele's last laugh. I'm sure that RPD will be looking on and enjoying that if that is the case. But as of right now, like say, he still hasn't found a partner. He's had plenty of time. He's known since the last show. I'm sure he's been trying to find people to team up with him, you know, trying to coax them into forming an even temporary one-night alliance with him. And like say, at the moment, he hasn't found anyone, and I'm personally quite skeptical about whether he's actually going to.
Well, considering Lord Damien Stone does some radio work here, I'm thinking of the U2 song, I'm Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, could potentially be the song for the Ronan Brian Adenson. So certainly we'll see here. I mean, they do both have that kind of bald head there a little bit, so we'll certainly see. But let me get to some comments from Lord Damien Stone, because he was there at Redemption. He says, I can definitely see gold over the shoulder of the Ronin in the near future. The only thing holding him back at the moment is his obsession with getting his hands on the natural born fighter, RPD. And then he also comes in here and says, there's one guy that was looking for an alliance at the last show. Could we possibly see Oh, good point. West Side here, Taylor West and the Ronin Brian Adenson join forces. Could that be a possibility? Maybe Taylor West here and the Ronin Brian Adenson. You want to talk about an interesting alliance? I mean, that would be something. Is he onto something here, Lord Damian Stone? Is that something you think?
I mean, Taylor West was somebody that I thought about when I was thinking through the potential people who could team up with him. And while he did obviously extend an olive branch to Craig Collins at the last show, I think that's because Taylor West knows him so well and knows what Collins has to offer. And I think ultimately West sees benefit for him in that relationship. I think West, like Adenson, isn't naturally somebody who does look to team up with people. Obviously, he did form the triad, but that didn't really go very well. And ever since then, he's been by himself. It's definitely not impossible. Definitely not. It might be something. Obviously, when he spoke at the last show, he did say that he came back and that he wanted everything. And obviously the tag titles will be part of that. He's never been tag champion in KOW. So yeah, I mean, based on both of them, I think they're both lone wolves, and I think those are two very big egos to try and work together. So if they did end up teaming up, I think, to be honest, I'd give it to the Freak Show because I just can't see Adenson and West coexisting, even just for the length of one wrestling match.
Right, they haven't been a team together. You have to have some chemistry, right? So automatically off the bat, even those two guys, I mean, Taylor West always wells, West Side! He's always yelling, West Side! West Side! I mean, and then you got the Ronin Brian Adenson, who, I mean, he is basically, he could kick anybody's head off, but I mean, those two personalities are in so different ways from each other, such polar opposites. So I don't know if that would work. So you would have to say, see, in these other matches here, you can make a case. Commissioner Steele, when it comes to 2-bit, he's picking the person. So in some sense, Steele's got a plan. So at least you gotta give the mystery opponent a shot. Then you've got RPD and Keenan. That's a legitimate. I mean, that's a legitimate. You could definitely make strong cases for either way. But in this match here, I mean, I'll try to get the Ronin Brian Adenson's perspective on this. I mean, I don't know if this could go either way. This could blow up in the face of the Ronin Brian Adenson, or this could be something where, you know what? Maybe Commissioner Steele has a soft spot in his heart for the Ronin Brian Adenson. I mean, they did meet afterwards. He did sort of give him a bone. You could sort of make that case. I mean, it's sort of, I guess the old adage is, ALP, half a loaf is better than no loaf in this case.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, Steele is the poster boy for odd couple tag teams in KOW, considering Royal Justice and the success that they had. So I'm sure if you'd asked me before the show that they first teamed up, if you'd said to me, if Steele and Grayson team up, would they win? I'd have been like, no, not in a million years. And then obviously they did and went on to basically create the tag team division in KOW. So maybe I'm just being skeptical, and whether it be Taylor West or somebody else, maybe the unpredictability will give them the advantage. Maybe we'll find that, there is some natural chemistry, some unexpected chemistry between Brian and whoever he teams up with. But yeah, either way, it's going to be interesting. Are we going to find out who his partner is before the show? Are we going to find out on the night of? I mean, I think if I was Brian and I find a partner, I would definitely not be revealing who that is, because that's a big advantage to give away for free ahead of the show. So, I mean, if Brian is listening, I'm sure he will be at some point.
No, he will be. We'll make sure we have him hear it on social media. I can promise you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if he does find a partner, if it was me, I'd definitely be keeping that card up my sleeve and not letting the Freak Show know who they're going to be wrestling until the moment his tag team partner walks through the curtain. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating. Again, much like we said with sort of 2-Bit's mystery opponent, is he going to be a core member of the roster? Going to be a former member of the roster? Is he going to be somebody brand new that the KOW fans have never seen before? Obviously, Brian, has been wrestling all over the Northwest. He wrestles for Wrestle Island and TNT and a bunch of other places. So there'll probably be a lot of people he's aware of.
I mean, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to try to get him on before July the 9th. I'm going to try and see if I can get him on, and we'll ask him this question. I have a couple thoughts, and I'm going to save it for when the Ronin Brian Adenson comes on, because there's a couple of wrestlers I have in mind, maybe outside of KOW, that he has a relationship with, that he's wrestled before, which I think could be potential names, maybe based off size, maybe based off different things. So I believe we're going to have him on before July the 9th. So that's going to probably be our week on Sportswire Radio to ask that question. So I'm going to do the Ronin Brian Adenson a favor, because He seems to like us. I like his ring ability. I'm not going to speculate yet on names. I have a few that I'm going to bring up that I'm going to do on behalf of the KOW locker room and certainly for the freak show, you might say. So I'm going to hold the fort on that. But when it comes to Meltdown, before we get out of here, get about another 15 or so minutes with ALP. And of course, always love speaking with our dear friend, Mr. ALP. You can follow and like his page on Facebook at ALP Streams. Also, give him a follow at Twitter, ALP Streams. Also, KO_wrestling on Twitter, K_O_wrestling on Instagram. Also, Knockout W on Facebook. And listen, KOW, again, I say it over and over and over. Just one of my favorite companies, maybe my favorite company, because I think about the talent that we've had on here. All started really from KOW with obviously Commissioner Steele's been on, Lucas Neon, the unhinged Will Carter, obviously Two-Bit I've had on a bunch of times, Andre Decker, can never forget about Andre Decker. RPD is now a part of the family, the Playboy Prince Lance Rivera. The guy like Isaiah Quinn was in KOW in the past. He was with us here many times. I mean, Lucy, can never forget about Lucy. I've had on Lucy here. She's right up there at all-time Sportswire Radio fair. I mean, so many people that have been in KOW. The Ronan Brian Aidenson now, the Playboy Prince Lance Rivera. Could go on all day. And that's why we love KOW here. And going now into Meltdown, July the 9th, is there anything else that we should keep an eye on or you think that's important? Because, there's, again, a lot of developments are going to happen between now and July. We've got about 2.5 weeks, but anything else of note here that we should keep an eye on when it comes to the KOW roster and especially going into Cloud9, the lounge on the 9th?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've still got some talent that haven't been scheduled the matches of yet. I believe, again, from speaking to Steele earlier, I think he's intending on maybe having another 2 matches from what I've been told. So hopefully there are going to be another couple that are getting announced in the near future. Obviously, we've got the other members of the underclass. We've got Logan and Decker, who haven't had a match announced yet. We've got, Lucas Neon, Big Guns Joe, both set to compete as well. So, we have still got some other talent who are sort of waiting to find out what they're going to be doing at the show. I would also just mention very briefly that earlier this week we launched our free ticket giveaway for 2 free tickets to the show. Yes. So if you're interested in that, head over to our Facebook page that Tom so kindly plugged before, and you can enter that just by liking and sharing and commenting on that post on there. So if you want to come along for free, not even for £7, which is a bargain in and of itself, if you want to come along for free.
Forget about it. These days, £7 don't get you much, but it gets you a ticket into Cloud9 the Lounge, where you are going to see first-class talent, world champions and future world champions, easily.
Yeah, most definitely. So definitely keep an eye on all the socials because we're obviously going to be announcing more stuff there. We're also going to be having another Academy show on the Wednesday before. So if I'm quick, so that should be the 6th, Wednesday the 6th, if I'm getting my dates right there. And we'll be having another Academy show from Hartington Street Methodist Church. The last one we did was our first one we'd done post-lockdown. Some really interesting members of the Academy at the moment, who are potentially going to be coming through and coming up to main shows some point in the future. We've got Hazley Rose, Vintage Vern Valentine as well.
Very well. In fact, somebody I know very well saw her in Bolton Town Wrestling not too long ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And Jack Mercer as well as some of the KOW regulars like Nightmare and Lucas Neon and Hudson Payne / Ravy Davey, depending which day he's on. Yep. So they'll all be involved. I'll be there doing a bit of a ring announce as well. So if anyone's interested in that, I'll be there and coming back extra early to make sure I can sort of keep an eye on the next, crop of KOW talent. So that's definitely worth mentioning as well. Like we touched on before as well, we are getting close now to the 10th anniversary show. So I think if you've never been to a show before, now is the best time to hop on. Obviously, we've got Meltdown that we've talked about, 3 big title matches and more matches still to be announced. Our next show is going to be Road to Gold, which is our massive annual tournament. It's a who's who of KOW in terms of, former winners. Chris Ridgway's won it, Rick Marcus has won it, Greg Collins, Nightmare, Kid Lycos, like I say, it's a who's who of KOW wrestlers who've won that tournament. So that is always a huge show for us. And then the big one, the 10th anniversary show. So, whatever happens at this show is potentially going to have an impact on what ends up happening towards the 10th anniversary show. And, not to be too cliche, but, that's going to be our WrestleMania. So, if you've never been before and it's piqued your interest, definitely now is the time to jump on board and get yourself familiar and get yourself caught up with everything that's going on and come down and watch some great family-friendly action.
Absolutely, I love it. Obviously, UKW has their own WrestleMania upcoming, and the LWF just had one. And obviously, with KOW, it's going to be very, very special. No doubt about it here coming up in November, and so many great things to look forward to. And I'm really excited. Listen, so many great matches I know are ahead. And listen, Lucas Neon, I got to give him a huge shout out because Lucas Neon, not only he just recently had a child, but also he finally won a match in Odyssey Pro Wrestling. So I finally got to see him win a match. I was very happy to see that Lucas Neon finally, because I don't think he was going to win a match for a while. I was like, is somebody pulling a rib there? He's just never going to win a match. I thought that was so good to see him finally. And I love his music. And the fans they really get into that. I have to say, Lucas Neon very well. He might just, I think I said it when he came on, and I always say, I think Lucy and I have spoken about this a couple of times on air. I think he very well might have the best entrance of anybody I've seen. And War Machine Craig Collins is not too far, but I heard his music. Dun, 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 dun. I mean, I get pumped up for that. We got to do like KOW, like entrance musics on YouTube. We have to get like some of these. I know Lucas, I think, had a part in creating his own, but we got to find that way. Certain wrestlers I know, they now have pages where you can listen to their own music. We got to find it. Some of these guys like 2-Bit and Lucas Neon and certainly the War Machine, Craig Collins, they have to figure it out. But that is here nor there. But I want to ask you a couple quick questions. And one of the questions I want to ask you is, and you kind of segued into it, I mean, what do you want to say to anybody that's watched this here tonight, whether it's like a Goliath or a Damian Stone who might come back, that after hearing what they've heard tonight from us and maybe got excited because they heard about RPD, because RPD's got fans all over. Anytime I speak about RPD, everybody finds out. What would you want to say to those people who might be on the fence but are now starting to like what they hear about KOW? Maybe they want to come out and buy a ticket to go see you guys at Cloud9 The Lounge on the 9th of July.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we've only scraped the surface of going back to the previous question, delayed response. But, in terms of other things that are going to be potentially going on at this show that, might pique people's interest is, like you mentioned, Lucas Neon. What's going to be next for him? He's come off losing the trophy. He's come off failing to win it back again. Obviously, we saw him have an interview with Lucy from the guys at Pods Unknown, and he seemed very dejected and down. Maybe the worst I've seen him since he was forced to be part of the group with Mark Morellis and 2-Bit back before he was a faction leader and was in fact a follower in a faction for a period of time. Yep. So that's an interesting point. Obviously, the last show, Taylor West approached Craig Collins and extended him the olive branch like we touched on earlier. What's going to happen with that? Like I said, Decker and Logan, seemingly they're out of tag title contention. Sort of when you look at the makeup of that team, it does look like, 2-Bit's there for the heavyweight title, Keenan's there for the showcase title, they're there for the tag title. So what are they going to do? Are they going to have a chance to get themselves back up the rankings? Are they going to have to do something extreme to try and get back in contention? That's a point of interest as well. But yeah, I mean, in terms of people who might think about coming, what I would say is, it's definitely worth giving our shows a chance. The crowd are always super into it, super loud. The atmosphere is really, really cool. It's really special. Obviously, I know you, Tom, before I've talked about the venue, and I think that's a big part of it. The atmosphere in there and the layout of it is really cool. And not to disparage any other companies, but it really is a passion project. It's about, our love of wrestling and our love of
I know
Barrow.
about passion projects. I'm doing this 3.5 years. I can tell you about passion projects, and ask me off the air about the time I've put into Sportswire Radio and the passion that I still have to do this. And certainly, I can certainly appreciate and respect the whole passion project concept.
Yeah, so I think, like say, that obviously, for people who, doing it to make a living, obviously great, crack on, giving people opportunities, wrestlers opportunities, giving great entertainment to fans. But for us, it's all just about our love of wrestling and, giving that to the people of Barrow. Like I've said before when we've spoken, when I was a kid or when Lucas Neon, well, I mean, not Lucas Neon because he did come to our shows, but, when I was a kid, when Craig Collins was a kid, when that's the sort of first generation of KOW were growing up in Barrow, we didn't have, a promotion. We had the, American wrestling that would come to town once a year and wasn't very good and was sort of my view of what bad family-friendly wrestling is. We want to fill that gap and we want, the young kids, like, the Lunatic Louise and like my friend from work, son Matt, who they travel through from Manchester to come to any of our shows. Yeah, that was pretty cool. But yeah, so we want to give them that, and I think it comes across that, you know, it is being all done out of love. You know, we haven't got the biggest production values in the world. We haven't got, you know, massive hologram displays, and, you know, we aren't showing videos before the matches and stuff. But I think, you know, it's more of a genuine aspect. It's who we are. It's what we like to do. And for us, it's all about the matches and the stories and the characters and the interactions that they have with those fans. And I honestly think, personally, for what we are, I think you could stack us up against anyone else in the Northwest, in the rest of the UK. And I think the people that come to our shows and love coming to our shows and come back again and again, they know how special it is. And we just want, you know, as many people as possible to be able to experience that. So, you know, for Damien Stone, obviously, thanks for coming to the previous show. I appreciate it. Hopefully you'll come and join us again, just to, you know, for a specific person we've talked about. But yeah, in general, you know, even if wrestling's not your thing, you know, give it a go. You know, we do have a lot of families and we do have a lot of kids, but we do get the people, you know, going on a night out, and we'll come and have a couple of cans at the show,
Lucy
and then go out.
the point how she got involved with you guys. You know, she came to a show, and all of a sudden, Lucy, I mean, it's really kind of one of those pie in the sky things. I mean, Lucy didn't fit the family friendly kid crowd. I mean, Lucy's been with you guys, and she came out before COVID and basically became a fan of you guys. And now she's, you know, on her way to being a Renee Paquette, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, like say, you know, don't, you know, necessarily judge a book by its cover. Don't see the phrase family friendly as a, you know, a bad thing. There's a lot of fantastic companies in the Northwest who are family friendly. You know, we've talked about a lot of them, OPW, the Kingdom of Wrestling, you know, Future Shock. There's lots of great companies that are more family friendly, or at least, you know, don't lean into the more adult kind of stuff. And, you know, that kind of wrestling for me can be some of the best wrestling going. So if you want to come out, have a great night of entertainment for a bargain price, then, you know, definitely do come along, check it out. Like I said, we've already got 3 huge title matches scheduled that all promise to be intriguing, and I think are all going to deliver. We've got more matches lined up. We've got some great talent, you know, like I say, even talking about the people that haven't even got a match yet, you know, the Big Guns Joe, you know, one of the best in the UK, Lucas Neon, you know, one of the best we have. And obviously now, you know, like you've mentioned, taking strides and wrestling for our promotions, you know, it's a real proving ground. You're going to see some of the best in the UK. You're going to see some people who may go on to do much bigger and better things, travel internationally, wrestle for WWE maybe even someday based on our prior track record. So yeah, it's definitely worth coming down. I'll be there. I'll be, you know, ring announcing and trying to be somewhat entertaining and not stumble over my words too much. So come down and be nice to me, please. I don't care if you're nice to any of the wrestlers, just be nice to me. But yeah, come on down and you'll have a great time. I promise.
Oh, I definitely know it's going to definitely be a great time. And these are reasons why you have to continue to support KOW, because we always love to support those who support us on Sportswire Radio. And KOW has been one of our biggest supporters here over the past 3.5 years that we have been alive here with the Sports Report, whether we were Sportinarium or Sportswire Radio. So always love covering KOW. Also, shout out to the Academy and all the young and up-and-coming people hailing Hazley Rose, another example of that. I mean, a lot of different people that you're going to see. That's where it all starts. And Rick Marcus came out of there. Two Bit came out of there. Will Carter, Lucas Neon. I mean, there's a lot of people that came out of the Academy that they've gone on to do bigger and better things here. And certainly you're going to get a mix of it. I like to say KOW in a lot of ways might be family friendly, but it's still like Baskin Robbins. You get all 31 flavors. You never know what you're going to get. You're going to get a little bit of different things of everything. That's why we love KOW here. But it has always been an honor here, my friend. I'm looking forward to the next time I have you on here, probably after July the 9th, and we'll get ready, obviously, for 10th anniversary, Road to Gold, recap the show and everything else. So I want to give you the floor. I want to now give you some closing thoughts, anything you want to plug, share, and can't thank you enough. Also, shout out to Oakley. I know Oakley made some appearances first. I know Oakley was definitely Oakley probably got us more of the listeners tonight, but certainly we do want to make sure we recognize Oakley and all the great things that you do for us, most importantly. So I want to give you the floor. Anything you want to plug, say, and I can't thank you enough, and fire away.
Thanks, buddy. Well, yeah, Oakley is the handsomest boy in the world, so I'm sure he did get a lot more viewers. But he's currently snoozing on the bed over there. I swear he knows when I'm on like camera with someone, because whenever I turn it on, he comes over and he's like, "Hello, give me attention."
Yeah, I
anyway,
saw that
enough about my cat.
10 minutes,
so yeah,
yeah. So the first 10 minutes, then afterwards, I guess it was other things that were more important.
Yeah, he was just sort of saying, "He like, what are you doing? What are you doing?" And then went off to do his own thing. But yeah, obviously to wrap up, as always, Tom, thanks very much for having me on. Thanks for obviously shining a spotlight on a lot of great promotions and a lot of great wrestlers. It's very much appreciated. And as we've always said, if you do end up ever coming to the UK, then
It
you'll be
might
more
be
than
coming a
welcome
lot
to
sooner
come
than I
along.
realize now. It might be coming a lot sooner than I realize now. So
you'll have to slide in my DMs and let me know the details.
I will.
But yeah, so obviously, Meltdown, July 9th, as we've talked about, 3 championship matches. We've got announced Keenan versus RPD for the Showcase title, the Freak Show versus Brian Anderson and the Mystery Partner for the Tag Team Championships, and then 2-Bit defending the Heavyweight Championship against an opponent or opponents, maybe, of Commissioner Steele's choosing. Like Tom said, you can get your tickets from PayPal. The link for that is on all of our social media, or from TNT Records Barrow. Big shout out to them. Sort of from Salthouse Post Office. Like I say, it'll be a great night of action. We've got more matches to be announced. Do definitely keep an eye on our socials. Obviously, keep supporting Tom and Sportzwire Radio as well. I know I really enjoy listening to his interviews, sometimes while I'm making my tea or I'm doing some housework. It's one of my things that I like to do and listen to while I'm sort of doing, boring, busy work that has made more fun by listening to you chatting to people. So yeah, big thanks once again. I'm looking forward to speaking to you soon. I'll obviously keep an eye out for Brian coming back, and hopefully you won't be too angry with me, and Lucy as well. So thanks very much, Tom. It's been a pleasure as always, and I'm going to go and cater to my crippling Fortnite addiction once we're done.
All right. Well, listen, enjoy Fortnite. Obviously, I'm looking forward to Lucy. That'll be next Friday, 8 o'clock British Standard Time. Also, the Ronin Brian Anderson, I believe we're technically, I think, the 7th or the 8th, but I'll have probably the confirmation by Friday of next week with Lucy. And then I believe the unforgettable Andre Decker very well might be making an appearance before July 9th. And certainly Andre Decker and myself is always interesting audio. We're almost like the odd couple in some ways. He doesn't want to admit it, but he definitely likes coming on. So we'll certainly figure that out. But obviously, all great stuff. Thank you for all that you do for us. Thank you for all that you do for KOW. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you soon. And can't wait for July 9th.
Thanks very much, buddy.
As we're here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show with the heart and soul of KOW, its event host and ring announcer, that's AOP. AOP. That's AOP. As I am the host of the Sports Report and the station manager of Sportswire Radio, the Reverend Tom Bryce. And if you like what you hear from us on Facebook, do give us a like at Sportswire Radio and sportnarium.com/player, where 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you can listen to all of our great content here. And stay tuned here for more on sportnarium.com/player and all of other platforms. We'll also be back here all throughout the week, so hang on tight here. So thank you so much for your time, as we were just with ALP to get us ready here for July 9th, next show here for KOW that is called Meltdown. So we'll have RPD versus Keenan. We'll also have 2-Bit versus a mystery opponent, and the Ronin, Brian Anderson, and also a partner of his choice against the Tag Team Champions Freak Show. All of that we'll continue to recap here next Friday with Lucy Simons, writer and reporter for KOW. So thank you, everybody, and good night for now.